In this lesson, we'll begin looking at painting our models in ZBrush, starting with looking at materials. So here you can see that we just have a sphere on the canvas, and it's this sort of red color, and you can see over here that it looks exactly like this little swatch. And so this is what's telling us the material that we have currently assigned to this. Now right now, it's just taking its material from whatever swatch this is, so that if we go in here and click on this, you can see that we have a number of different materials that we can choose from. If we click a different material, that will actually change our material over here, and it'll actually change the material on our model. So we don't yet have actually a material assigned to the polygons here on our in our Z tool. It's actually taking this material from whatever is selected over here in our material slot. Okay, so that's one way to go about it. If you don't exactly know what kind of material you want to add to your model, you can always just leave that open and not assign a particular material. But let's say you want to have a specific material assigned. So in this case, we'll just choose the basic material. And so we want to be able to add this material to the object, let's say. And so one of the ways that we can do this is to fill our object. Now, this is under Color, Fill Object, but we want to make sure in our color settings here that we have the correct settings. So in this case, we're actually working with the material. So we'll choose the material button, and then we'll go to Color, Fill Object. Now it doesn't look like anything's happened, but when we change our material, now this material actually stays. So we have that material, that basic material, assigned to this sphere. Now we can also, beyond assigning materials to just the entire object, we can actually paint with our material. So we've just got a standard brush and the dot stroke, but let's go ahead and change that to maybe the drag rectangle, and we'll get a circular alpha. Okay, we want to make sure that material is on, and if we want to sculpt at the same time, we can choose Z add or Z sub, but if we don't want to do any sculpting at this point, we can just turn that off, so we'll only be painting with either color or material or both. Okay, we'll go ahead and change our draw size down a little bit. So now if I click and drag on here, I'm actually adding that material, and you can kind of see the difference in the reflectivity there. So it's not just a color difference, it's actually a different material, and I'm actually painting that on rather than assigning it. So we can go in here and add some different materials. This Gorilla Matte Cap, we can go ahead and add that, and you can see how that is really reflective in the orange, but not so much in the black. Okay, here's the matte cap skin. We can drop that on, so we can actually paint and assign different materials. If we want to change our stroke here, turn off our alpha, we can actually paint that material in there. The materials themselves can be modified under the material palette. We have those materials, and then underneath we have all the modifiers that we're able to change on those particular materials. You can find those materials here in your material slot as well. Okay, so if we wanted to take this back to our basic material, we could go ahead and choose our basic material and start to paint through this. So painting this back in. Okay, we can also go back in to Fill Object and just fill that back in with our color. Okay, so just keeping that in mind, you can use the Fill Object to fill your object with color. Initially you won't have any color, and it will just be assigned based on the material slot, but you can paint new color or new materials based on whatever material you have selected. So if you select something different, and we can maybe select something like this, change our stroke and alpha, and you can actually just paint with your material. So we're not painting with color, we're painting with whatever material this happens to be. So in this case it's really reflective, whereas the rest of the object isn't so much. Okay, so it's really powerful in terms of how you can actually paint. Now this is constrained by the size of the polygons, because as we're painting material on here, it's basically just adding that material to those particular polygons. And we'll talk about poly painting a little bit more in the next lesson as we get in with color and material. But just keep in mind that it's actually painting not on a texture map, not on a 2D map, but on the actual polygons themselves. So if you have something that is not subdivided, then you're not going to get the same results that you would. Okay, so you can see if I go all the way down here to subdivision level 1, are basically just adding that material to the particular polygons. We're not able to get a very high resolution shape. So think of it as being as dependent on the polygon count as your sculpting is. So, you know, if you would sculpt something on a lower level and it's not going to be fine enough and you're going to have to go up to another level, then your painting is going to be the same way. When you're adding materials and color, you're going to have to increase your polygon count by moving up the subdivision levels in order to get something that looks a high enough resolution. Okay, so if you want to actually remove the material assignment from your mesh, so let's say that we've got all these different materials assigned, and no matter what we do here, the material isn't changing. We can actually use a plugin that we'll talk about a little bit later. There's a lot of plugins that you can find for ZBrush. This one is called the Subtool Master. All the plugins that you install, you can find, or a lot of them, you can find under Z Plugin. Okay, and so make sure to check that out. The Subtool Master, I can just open that up, and if I go to Fill, this will allow me to either fill the subtools with color, material, or both. Basically, some of the same stuff that we can do up here. If I have all of these unselected and say OK, that'll actually remove that assignment, and I can get back to having that material removed. So it all depends on what you're trying to get. Now, in the next lesson, let's actually take this a little step further, and instead of just painting with materials, we will paint with a color as well. And one thing that I do want to mention is you can sample the material by clicking and dragging over here. So for instance, if we have this and do this, I can actually sample across to these different materials. So just clicking and dragging to that spot will allow you to sample that. Okay, so in the next lesson we will take a look at painting with color.